Noah Preston's hands were shaking as he yanked open the jammed car door, smoke curling around his face and glass crunching under his boots. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" he yelled, gagging on the acrid smell of gasoline and scorched metal. The woman inside was slumped forward, her face bloodied, her eyes fluttering like broken shutters. "I've got you." "Stay with me," he said, wrapping his arms around her and pulling her free just as the engine let out a high-pitched whine. Seconds after he dragged her onto the shoulder of the road, the car behind them erupted into flames. The woman coughed against his chest, her voice hoarse. I'm okay, I think." "You're not," Noah said, brushing hair from her face, "but you're alive." She blinked up at him, dazed. Even through the blood and smoke, she was stunning. Her eyes somewhere between green and gold locked on his. "I'm Jade," she croaked. "Noah," he said, his voice tight with adrenaline. "I'm calling an ambulance. Stay awake, Jade." The ambulance came fast, so did the police. And then came the questions. Lots of them. Noah answered as best he could while his 6-year-old son, Dylan, clung to his side in oversized rain boots and a jacket 2 sizes too small. "She swerved," Noah told the officer. "Her car flipped twice. I pulled her out before it exploded." The officer nodded, scribbling in his notebook. "You saved her life." Noah didn't feel heroic. His hands were still trembling, his jeans torn, and he hadn't eaten since breakfast. He just did what anyone would do, except he knew not everyone would have stopped. Not with a kid in the backseat, but he didn't hesitate, not for a second. As the paramedics wheeled Jade into the ambulance, she grabbed Noah's hand unexpectedly. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with pain. "Don't forget me." He gave her a soft, crooked smile. Not a chance. 2 weeks passed. Noah tried to push the incident out of his mind. He had a job to keep barely and a son to raise. His construction hours had been cut again, and if rent was late one more time, they'd be out. He'd sold his tools last month just to cover groceries. He didn't expect to see Jade again. Not really. But then she showed up. She knocked on the door of his tiny apartment one rainy Wednesday afternoon like it was the most normal thing in the world. Dylan was doing homework on the floor, and Noah was elbow-deep in sink repairs. He opened the door, confused. Then stunned, Jade stood there in a cream trench coat, holding a small bouquet and a warm smile. Her face was healed, her hair pulled into a neat ponytail. She looked different, polished, like someone from a world he didn't belong in. "I wanted to thank you," she said. "You already did." "Not properly," she replied. "May I come in?" He blinked. Yeah, sure." She stepped inside, her heels clicking softly on the worn linoleum. Dylan peeked out from behind the couch. "Is that the lady from the car?" he whispered. Jade bent down, meeting his eyes. "I am, and you must be Dylan." "You almost blew up," Dylan said matter-of-factly. Jade laughed. "I did, but your dad saved me." Noah ran a hand through his hair, still shocked. "How did you find me?" "I remembered your name." "And you gave your statement to the police. It wasn't hard," he frowned. "Jade, why are you really here?" She hesitated. "Because I owe you, and because I haven't stopped thinking about you since that day." He froze. "You don't owe me anything, maybe not, but I want to do something for you." "Both of you?" Noah scratched the back of his neck. "I don't want charity." "It's not charity," she said, stepping closer. "It's gratitude and maybe curiosity." He met her eyes, trying to read her. He couldn't. She was too calm, too composed, too far out of his league. "I run a foundation," she continued. "We help families in transition. Housing, education support. I could get you back on your feet." His jaw tightened. "You think I'm a project?" "No." Her voice softened. "I think you're a good man and I want to help." He looked away. "I don't know. Just let me take you and Dylan out. Dinner one night, no strings." Dylan perked up. "Can we get burgers?" Jade smiled. "We can get anything you want." Noah sighed. "Fine." One dinner. That Friday night, she picked them up in a black SUV that probably cost more than his entire apartment building. Dylan's eyes went wide as they pulled up to a glowing restaurant with valets and chandeliers. "Is this a castle?" he asked. Jade laughed. "Kind of." "It's called the Viridian." Noah felt out of place the second he walked in. The lighting was soft, the servers wore tuxedos, and everyone looked like they belonged on magazine covers. Jade, however, looked completely at ease. She wore a simple navy dress and diamond earrings that sparkled every time she turned her head. Over dinner, Dylan devoured a gourmet burger the size of his face, and Jade ordered them a bottle of wine without blinking. Noah leaned in. "You sure you're just a foundation director?" She tilted her head. "I also own the foundation." He raised a brow. "You're the owner, I'm the founder, and the CEO, technically." His stomach dropped. "So you're a billionaire," she said simply. "Yes." He stared at her, speechless. She smiled, her voice gentle. "And I still remember the way you pulled me from that car like your life depended on it." He shook his head slowly. "I had no idea." "I know." They sat in silence for a moment, then she reached across the table, her fingers brushing his hand. "I meant what I said, Noah. I haven't stopped thinking about you." His heart thudded. "Jade, this is a lot." "I know. I'm just a guy with a kid and overdue rent." "You're also the man who saved my life." Their eyes met, and something shifted, something real. Something neither of them had expected, but couldn't ignore. Noah stood stiffly beneath the awning of the restaurant as rain tapped the sidewalk in a steady rhythm. He watched Jade help Dylan into the SUV, the boy grinning as the chauffeur held the door. The night had been surreal. "Every part of it. You don't have to do this," he said as she approached him again, umbrella lifted above them both. "I know," she replied, her voice steady, "but I want to. I don't like being in someone's debt." "Then don't think of it that way." He studied her. The way she held herself, the calm in her eyes. She didn't flinch when he looked at her too long. She didn't pretend to be someone she wasn't, not now. She was still the same woman who'd clutched his hand in the back of an ambulance, only now she stood in heels that probably cost more than his last 3 paychecks. "Dylan loved it," he muttered, glancing toward the SUV. "I could tell." He rubbed the back of his neck. "You're not doing this just because I pulled you out of a burning car, are you?" "No," she said, her gaze unwavering. "That opened the door, but it's not why I'm still standing here." He swallowed hard. "I don't know what this is." "Neither do I," she admitted. "But I'd like to find out." The next morning, Noah found an envelope taped to his door. Inside was a card with a single sentence written in looping cursive. "Saturday, noon, dress for the outdoors." Below it was an address in Westchester. He stared at the paper like it might bite him. "Is it from the fancy lady?" Dylan asked, popping the last piece of toast into his mouth. "Yeah," Noah said, distracted. "Looks like it." "You gonna go?" Noah hesitated. "I guess we'll see." Saturday arrived cloudy and cool. Noah borrowed a jacket from their upstairs neighbor and made sure Dylan was packed with snacks before dropping him at his friend's apartment down the hall. He never left his son with anyone, but Mrs. Horowitz had watched Dylan before and insisted it was no trouble. The address led to a private equestrian estate. Tall wrought iron gates parted slowly as his name was checked at the entrance. He followed a gravel drive lined with sycamores until a stable came into view, flanked by open fields and a white farmhouse that looked like it belonged in a magazine. Jade was already waiting, wearing riding boots and a navy windbreaker, her hair pulled back beneath a soft cap. She looked natural here, like she belonged among open skies and fine leather saddles. "I wasn't sure you'd come," she said. "I almost didn't," he admitted, stepping out of the car. Her eyes lingered on him. "You clean up well." "I borrowed the jacket. Looks better on you than it ever did on whoever owned it." He followed her toward the stables, where a groom was adjusting the bridle on a caramel-colored mare. "You ride?" she asked. "Nope." "Well, you're about to learn." He raised a brow. "You're putting me on a horse. You've faced worse," she teased. "Remember the burning car?" "I wasn't sitting on top of it." She laughed, and the sound wrapped around him, warmer than the morning sun. They rode slowly through the fields, the horses calm and obedient beneath them. She led him to a ridge overlooking a pond. They dismounted and sat on a weathered bench nearby, silence settling between them like a soft blanket. "I used to come here with my mother," Jade said quietly. "Before everything got complicated," he glanced at her. "What happened?" "She died when I was 20, cancer. My father buried himself in work. I buried myself in numbers." He nodded, not pushing. "I built my first company before I turned 25, she continued. "I didn't stop for 10 years. And now, I stopped. After the accident, I realized I'd been racing toward something I didn't even want. I don't remember the last time someone looked at me without calculating what I was worth." Noah looked at her, brow furrowed. "You think I care about your bank account?" "No," she said, voice firm. That's why I invited you, he exhaled slowly. I'm not used to all this, the cars, the horses, the invitations. I get it. I don't belong in your world. She turned to face him fully. Maybe I don't belong in mine either. His eyes held hers for a long moment. The wind rustled the leaves and a hawk circled high above the pond. I'm a builder, he said finally, or I was. I used to fix things with my hands. Now I'm just trying to keep a roof over our heads. You still build, she said gently. You built a life for your son, that counts. He looked away. That's not the kind of thing people usually notice. I noticed. That night, back in his apartment, Noah sat on the couch long after Dylan had gone to bed. He stared at the ceiling, replaying the day in his mind, the way her hand had brushed his when they passed the reins. The way her laugh lingered after the horses had wandered ahead. The way she looked at him like he wasn't just another man trying to survive. The next morning, a knock came at his door. When he opened it, a man in a suit stood holding a small folder. Mr. Preston? Yeah, I'm from Oralia Holdings. Miss Lockwood asked me to deliver this personally. Noah took the folder, baffled. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a key. The paper read, "This is the address of a place I bought last year. It's a fixer-upper. I thought maybe you'd want to take a look. No obligations, just potential." Jay, the address was local, close enough to walk. He stared at the key in his palm. Dylan tugged on his sleeve. What's that? An opportunity, Noah said, voice quiet. He didn't know what Jade was doing. But whatever it wasn't about guilt. It was about something else, something neither of them had dared name yet. The house was quiet when Noah stepped inside. Dust floated in the dim light slicing through the cracked blinds, and the scent of old wood hit him like a memory he couldn't place. The floor creaked beneath his boots as he moved through the empty rooms. The place was a shell, but the bones were solid. He could see that right away. High ceilings, thick beams, a fireplace that could be brought back to life. He ran a hand along the frame of the front door. Whoever built it hadn't cut corners. Someone had cared once. Now it stood hollow, waiting. He hadn't brought Dylan yet. Not until he knew what this was turning into. Outside, he found Jade leaning against the hood of her car, arms folded as she watched the clouds roll in. Her jacket fluttered in the wind and she turned as he approached. It's got good structure, he said. She nodded. I thought you'd see it. You bought this a while ago. It was going to be an investment. Then I forgot about it. You don't forget about a whole house. Her expression flickered. I did, until you reminded me what it's like to want to build something instead of just buying it ready. He looked back at the porch. It needs everything. Then it's perfect, she said. You don't want something already finished. He hesitated. You offering me a job, I'm offering you a chance. He turned to face her fully. And what's in it for you? Her voice was quiet. I want to see what you can make when no one's telling you how to do it. He studied her. There's always a catch. Not this time. You're trusting me with your property. I'm trusting you with your talent. Noah clenched his jaw, thinking, I'd need materials, tools, a place to store things. I'll cover expenses, you handle the vision. He blinked. You're serious. I don't play games, Noah. He looked back at the house. I'd need to bring Dylan by. If it's going to take time, I can't be away from him that long. You can both come. I'll have the utilities turned on today. He turned back to her. You really don't care what it costs. I care what it becomes. A week later, Dylan stood in the middle of the living room with a measuring tape and a clipboard, calling out numbers while Noah marked the walls. The boy had taken to the project like he'd been waiting his whole life to hold a pencil behind his ear and draw crooked floor plans on scrap paper. Jade arrived just after noon, carrying a brown bag and 2 thermoses. She stepped around a pile of stacked lumber and handed Noah a sandwich wrapped in butcher paper. Roast beef, no mustard. He raised a brow. You remembered that. I pay attention. Dylan pulled her toward what used to be the kitchen. I drew where the new stairs could go. Wanna see? She knelt beside him, studying the drawing like it belonged in an architect's portfolio. This is incredible. You're going to run this site one day. Noah watched them from the doorway. He didn't say it, but something tightened in his chest. She fit here, not just in the house. In the space they were building together. Later that night, after Dylan had fallen asleep with sawdust still smudged on his cheek, Noah stepped out onto the porch, where Jade stood staring out at the darkening sky. You didn't have to stay so late. he said. I wanted to. He leaned against the post beside her. Why? She turned her face toward him, her eyes unreadable. Because when I'm here, I don't feel like I'm performing. Performing what? The part people expect. The billionaire, the polished executive. The woman who always has the answer. He tilted his head. And what part do you want to play? For once, I'd like to just be a person, with someone who doesn't need anything from me but truth. They stood in silence for a moment, the air cool and still. Then she asked, Do you regret pulling me out of that car? He blinked. What kind of question is that? The kind I've been too afraid to ask. He shook his head slowly. If I hadn't, I'd be wondering every day if I could have made a difference. I'd never sleep again. She looked away. You made more than a difference. He took a step closer. This thing, whatever it is between us, it's not simple. No, she agreed. It's messy and complicated and worth it. His voice dropped. You really think this could work? I don't know, she admitted. But I don't want to walk away without finding out. He stared at her, and for the first time in years he felt something under his skin that wasn't fear or exhaustion. It was hope. Stubborn, dangerous hope. Without thinking, he reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. I've got nothing to offer you, Jade. She stepped closer. You've already given me more than anyone ever has. He searched her face. And if I fall for you, her voice was barely above a whisper. Then I'll catch you. In the silence that followed, the wind picked up, rustling through the leaves and carrying the faintest scent of sawdust and rain. And for the first time since the accident, neither of them felt like they were standing in the wreckage anymore. They were building something new, together. The scent of fresh paint still lingered in the air as Noah stepped back from the wall, wiping his palm on his jeans and eyeing the trim along the hallway. The house had transformed over the past month, not just structurally, but atmospherically. Where once it had felt hollow, now it breathed. Laughter echoed off the walls some days, and the light that spilled through the windows felt warmer than it had any right to be. Jade stood at the far end of the hall, her shoes off, barefoot on the hardwood they'd installed together. She was holding a small framed photo. It was of Dylan, mid-laugh, with a hammer in one hand and wood shavings caught in his hair. I had it printed yesterday, she said, not looking away from the picture. I wanted something real in here. Noah leaned his shoulder against the doorway. That's the first time anyone's captured him standing still. He looks free, she murmured. Like he belongs here, he does. She turned to face him. So do you. He crossed the hall slowly, stopping in front of her. I've spent years moving from one temporary thing to the next. Jobs that never lasted, apartments that barely qualified as shelter. I never thought I'd stand in a place that felt like mine. She held his gaze. It is yours, he exhaled. I don't know how to accept something without feeling like I'm borrowing it. Then don't borrow it. Stay, his voice caught. You mean that? I've been waiting for you to believe it. They stood there, the air thick with unspoken things, until a thump echoed from the staircase. Dylan appeared, one sock on, the other dangling from his hand. I found that old toolbox you thought you lost, he said, holding it up triumphantly. It was under the stairs. Noah blinked. That thing's been missing for a year. Guess the house wanted to keep it. Jade laughed, but her eyes didn't leave Noah's. Even the house seems to know. Later that night, after Dylan had fallen asleep on the makeshift couch with his arms wrapped around an old pillow, Noah stepped onto the porch. Jade was already there, barefoot again, sipping something from a steaming mug. You always drink tea this late? He asked. She didn't look at him. No, only when I'm trying to slow my thoughts down. What are you thinking about? She hesitated. My father. Noah stayed quiet. He called today, first time in 6 months. Her voice was steady, but there was a tightness beneath it. He heard about the accident from one of the board members, wanted to know if it was true that I'd been living off-grid with a contractor and his child, his words. What did you tell him? That I was finally happy. Noah's throat tightened. He didn't like that, did he? He asked if I'd lost my mind, said I was risking everything for a man who doesn't move in our circles. I don't, Noah said simply. She turned to him then. I don't want our circles, Noah, I want this. He stepped closer, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. You sure? Because I can't give you yachts or press releases or whatever people like him expect. You give me quiet when the world's too loud. You give Dylan someone to count on, and you gave me back something I forgot I could want normal. I'm not always good at normal, he said. Neither am I. They stood there, the porch light casting a soft glow between them, until she stepped into his arms like it was the only place she'd ever meant to be. He held her tightly, the mug forgotten on the railing, and for the first time in as long as he could remember, the weight on his chest didn't feel so heavy. 3 weeks later, the house was finished. Not perfect, not polished, just finished. The kind of finished that came from effort and sweat and laughter that lingered in the corners. Jade threw a small gathering, just a few people from the foundation, Dylan's teacher, and the neighbor who'd lent Noah a ladder more than once. Everyone brought something to eat. Dylan gave a tour like he'd been trained by a real estate agent. When evening fell and the crowd thinned, Jade took Noah's hand and led him up to the small room they turned into an office. She opened a drawer and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. "I had the deed transferred this morning," she said, placing it in his hand. He stared at the document, blinking. "You're giving it to me. I'm not giving you anything," she said. "You earned it. Every nail, every floorboard, every hour. You built it." His hands trembled slightly as he looked at her. "You really want this to be our life?" She nodded. "I already chose it." He pulled her into him, his forehead resting against hers. "I fell for you the day you stepped into my apartment in that ridiculous trench coat." She laughed, wiping a tear from her cheek. "I fell for you the minute I realized you'd risked everything, with your son in the car, just to save a stranger." "You weren't a stranger," he whispered. "No," she said. "I was always yours, you just didn't know it yet." They kissed slow and sure, the kind of kiss that sealed more than just promises. It sealed a home, a bond, a future. Outside, Dylan let out a whoop from the porch, chasing fireflies barefoot in the grass. The stars blinked to life above them, and the house glowed from the inside out. For the first time, Noah didn't feel like he was surviving. He felt like he was home. The first time Noah wore a suit that actually fit him, it was because Jade had it made. He stood in front of the mirror in the bedroom they now shared, tugging at the cufflinks while the soft hum of music drifted up from downstairs. The tailor had delivered the charcoal gray suit to the house 2 days ago, and Noah had avoided putting it on until he couldn't anymore. When Jade appeared in the doorway, she stopped mid-step. "You look." She paused, tilted her head, and then gave a slow, approving nod. "Like you own the place. I'm not used to clothes that don't scratch or come from a clearance rack." "Then get used to them," she said, stepping closer and straightening his collar. "Because tonight, you'll be standing in front of 100 people who donated to the foundation, and they're all going to want to meet the man behind the house. You make it sound like I'm some kind of myth." "No," she said, her voice lowering. "You're just not ordinary. And the world's about to see that." He looked at her then, and he had seen her in 1,000 different ways over the past few months, but never like this. Her gown was simple, dark green, fitted to her frame like it had been stitched by hand with her in mind. Her hair was swept up, a few strands falling near her jaw, and her earrings caught the light each time she turned her head. "You're nervous," she said, watching him. "I've never spoken to more than 5 people without a drill in my hand." She slid her fingers into his. "Then hold on to me. You won't have to do it alone." Downstairs, the gala buzzed with quiet opulence. Waitstaff passed trays of imported hors d'oeuvres, and the garden had been lit with soft, golden uplighting that made it look like something out of a dream. Dylan, in a tiny navy suit and sneakers, had already found the dessert table and was deep in negotiation with the pastry chef. Jade led Noah through the crowd with ease, introducing him only when necessary, always with a hand resting lightly on his back like an anchor. When they reached the small stage tucked beneath the ivy-wrapped pergola, she turned to him. "They're here because of the work, not the wealth, don't forget that." "I won't forget anything," he said. "Especially not the way you've changed everything." The guests fell quiet as Jade stepped up to the microphone. Her voice was clear, practiced, but warmer than Noah had ever heard it in public. "Tonight isn't about numbers, it's about lives. And none of what we've done this year could have happened without one man stepping into mine on the worst day of his." She turned slightly, her eyes finding his in the crowd. "Noah Preston reminded me what it means to build something from the ground up, not just a house, but a life, a home, a future. And tonight, I want to honor that." A spotlight rose on him as she stepped back and gestured for him to join her. The applause was thunderous, but Noah barely heard it. He only saw her, standing there like she'd always been waiting for him to reach her. He took the stage, cleared his throat, and let the silence settle. "I'm not a public speaker," he said. "I'm not a businessman. I'm a dad who got lucky on a bad day, and then luck turned into a woman who wouldn't let me forget that I mattered." A ripple of emotion moved through the crowd. Noah's voice didn't shake, but every word cost him something. "When I walked into that house for the first time, the one she handed me a key to, I didn't think it'd turn into anything. But it did. It turned into home. Because of her." He turned to Jade, his voice softening. "You didn't just give me a second chance. You gave me a life I didn't dare imagine." That night, long after the last guest had gone and the final lantern had burned out, Noah carried Jade's heels in one hand and held her other hand in his as they crossed the empty garden. "You know," she said, glancing over her shoulder at the house, "I thought I'd built everything I needed before I met you. And now I know I was just waiting for someone to walk through the fire and find me." They stopped beneath the arbor, the moonlight catching the curve of her smile. "I want a life with you, Noah, not because you saved me, but because you see me." He stepped closer, setting the shoes down and wrapping his arms around her waist. "I want the same," he said. "But not just the life I want every morning, every late-night grocery run. Every ridiculous science project Dylan forgets to tell us about until the night before it's due." She laughed, the sound quiet and full of promise. "Then marry me," she said suddenly, breathlessly, like the thought had just broken free. He froze. "I mean it," she whispered. "Not someday. Not eventually. Let's do it. Let's make this real in every way." He didn't answer with words. He kissed her, slow and certain, and when he pulled back, his voice was rough with emotion. "Yes." 3 weeks later, in a small clearing behind the house, with fairy lights strung between the trees and Dylan standing proudly as best man, they said their vows. There were no photographers, no headlines, no corporate guests, just the people who mattered, just truth. Jade wore a cream silk dress that fluttered at her knees, and Noah wore the same suit she'd had tailored for him, sleeves rolled slightly. They exchanged rings beneath the branches, and when the officiant declared them husband and wife, the world didn't shift. It settled. That night, as they danced barefoot in the yard while Dylan fell asleep inside with a book still open on his chest, Jade looked up at Noah and whispered, "This is everything." He tightened his arm around her. "No, this is just the beginning," and it was. Because they didn't need endless rooms or private jets or ballrooms full of strangers. They had something rarer. A life built from fire and foundation, from near loss and second chances. And at the center of it, all a love that had found them when they least expected it and never let go.